Your CIE IGCSE English Language Paper 2 is on Friday. Oh my God. Well, you're in luck. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 past pupil paragraphs from a descriptive writing question, which are actually pretty good, and we're going to make them even better. I'm also going to show you my full response to a descriptive narrative writing question, and I'm going to give you loads of tips. So stay tuned. Let's get you the mark you deserve. Schofield on Shakespeare.
I explore the mark scheme in terrible detail elsewhere, but of course the key principles need to be in your mind as you plan and craft your response for this section of the paper. Put simply, for the 16 marks you need to write with a convincing, engaging style and tone, having chosen your question carefully. For paragraphing, you're not just plonking chronologically, but structuring for effect. So you might have a paragraph which switches perspective, goes back in time, or shifts from description to musing. For the 24 marks, this is about varying sentence structures for effect, so a range of sentence lengths and a different starting word for each sentence within an individual paragraph. Your sentences must be consistently in control with a wide range of punctuation used, i.e., make sure you use a question mark, an exclamation mark, and a semicolon, as well as the usual full stops and commas. Vocabulary choices need to make it clear to the marker that you are good at English and can use more complex, engaging words, provided, of course, they fit and flow within the sentence. Your vocabulary needs to be precise, well chosen, and spelling must be really good. Here's an exam-style question. Write a description with the title, The Power of Nature. Why not have a go at planning how you might write a response to this, or indeed write the full response? If planning, some of my past pupils have found it helpful to use these grids. Ensure that each paragraph has a clear, distinct focus. And why not pre-plan those similes, metaphor, and other devices which will contribute to your piece being more engaging and sophisticated? So press pause and get cracking.
Let's now look at a paragraph from a past pupil.
This pupil wrote, "It was Christmas and I was cold, hungry and cold. My first Christmas living like this, homeless, with nothing other than a grey mountain warehouse sleeping bag and a battered cardboard box for my few possessions. I must have looked a sorry sight. Not that anyone was looking. The frosty steel railings were like cold prison bars against my back. I could hear the faint chirping of a radio proclaiming that it was the most wonderful time of the year. Hardly. I had moved to this spot to be more visible, but the intermittent foot traffic was marred by the fact that I couldn't feel my legs." What do you like about this response? Are there any ideas or phrases you could nick? What could make it better? Time now to scrutinise in detail and think or discuss. It's pause time. Plenty of positives. Sentences are clearly controlled and not unnecessarily long. The first word within an individual paragraph is consistently varied. It's great to see a wider range of punctuation from the get-go with a colon used accurately. I like the simile. Even though it has the potential to sound cliched, I don't think it does within this context, as it emphasises the lack of freedom for this homeless man living without a home and money. I also like the adjective frosty. I particularly like the second and third sentences of the second paragraph. There's the use of the noun chirping to refer to the jarringly cheerful sounds coming from the radio, and the sardonic tone about the most wonderful time of the year. The fact that the narrator is a million miles away from having the most wonderful time is emphasised by the grim one-word short sentence for effect, hardly. However, I wonder about the vocabulary in the first paragraph. Does it show off how well the candidate can write? Or does the initial compound sentence combined with adjectives such as hungry, cold, thirst and grey just sound a bit basic? The pupil himself wrote this revised version. The frigid air caught in my sluggish lungs. Here was a man approaching with an easy smile in his eyes. Upon seeing my mannequin body wrapped in my dirty mountain warehouse bedroll, it grew forced and moved from his eyes to his mouth. He devoted a tedious second to searching his pockets for change before gratefully passing by, Bezos-like. What do you make of this altered paragraph? Ponder or discuss? Yes, it's pause time. Well, we clearly now have some more complex vocabulary: frigid, sluggish, and mannequin. My mannequin body is quite an interesting metaphor, suggesting that the narrator's state of homelessness has effectively resulted in him becoming dehumanized. Rather than human flesh and blood, the narrator feels as though he is viewed as a mere fiberglass replica, something without feeling, something that doesn't really matter. I like the subtlety of the progression of the man's smile, from easy to forced to moving from his eyes to his mouth, thus showing, not telling us explicitly, that he is now faking his kindness, his light-hearted mood. I also like the inverted commas around searching, thus creating a cynical tone. Note that we've lost the colon from the original paragraph, and so this helps to tick the box for more varied punctuation. That said, I would prefer to see at least a colon or a semicolon within the first two paragraphs. And finally, we have the intriguing hyphenated simile, Bezos-like, referring to the billionaire founder of Amazon. I don't know a great deal about him, other than the fact that he is phenomenally wealthy and successful. I also sense that Amazon must have been pretty damn ruthless to get to their current dominant position in the market. Quite a lot of this ruthlessness would have stemmed from key management figures such as Bezos. My unfair instinct is that the guy is almost certainly quite unpleasant, and so these negative associations get transferred to the easy smiler passing by. I think this hyphenated simile was inspired by the pupil watching my video Avoiding Despair-Inducing Similes, GCSE Descriptive Narrative Writing 1. This video included the examples shown on screen here, taken from Edith Wharton's novel The Fruit of the Tree. In the first example, Wharton name-checks the tragic heroine of Shakespeare's King Lear, which made us all wonder about the value of name-checking famous figures and using them to steal associations. So we might have Trump-like, Boris-like, Putin-like. These hyphenated similes refer to world leaders, but of course it doesn't necessarily need to be a country's leader. You just need to hyphenate and choose someone with well-known, obvious characteristics. However, returning to this sentence, I just wonder whether it ends a little awkwardly. Might it be better to switch things round? It's such an interesting image, why not give the reader longer to think about it? I also wonder whether this subordinate clause may contain too many details. Do we need to know the brand of the bedroll? Is it particularly significant that it is from Mountain Warehouse? Would this condensed version be slightly better? And might the man seem all the colder if we were to omit this adverb? As with Mountain Warehouse, does it add anything? Isn't it obvious that he wants to get the hell out of there as quickly as possible?
Time now for a second paragraph from a different past pupil.
This pupil wrote, "Sat 12th of May, a date I had written numerous times already on the heaving pile of past papers that festered on my desk. All that occupied my mind was ionic equations and verb tables, and the detention I had in 3.5 hours' time. I got up and bundled myself into the kitchen to make a well-deserved cup of tea and take a break from writing, which my right hand desperately desired. Whilst the kettle whimpered its way to life behind me, I pondered about the paper I had just finished and remembered I forgot to put units on one of my answers. Did I have the energy to go and change it? No. Did I do it anyway? Yes, for that golden gleaming A star was all that mattered to me." What do you think about this response? Are there any ideas or phrases you could nick? What could make it better? Time now to scrutinise in detail and think or discuss. Plenty of positives here too, hey? I like the use of the verb festered, suggesting the putrid unhealthiness of the past papers on the pupil's desk, and by extension, his own state of mind. I also like the rather pathetic noises emitted from the kettle, which contributes to this overall atmosphere of struggling and stress. The overall accuracy is good, no spelling errors, and some variety in sentence lengths and structures. But I wonder whether this pupil tries to cover too much ground within just one paragraph. What happens within it? Well, we find out that Saturday, 12th of May, is a crucial day, that the narrator has a desk piled with past papers, that he's been doing some work on chemistry in a foreign language, that he has a detention coming up, that he makes himself a cup of tea, that he feels tired, and that he is becoming fraught due to overwork. Could the writing be even more effective if the focus was narrowed and the narrative cut back? For instance, could he have emphasised even more the importance of Saturday the 12th of May, and I'm sorry, shortening the day is nearly unforgivable, by using anaphora to build up some momentum. For instance, Saturday the 12th of May, a date I had written numerous times already on the heaving pile of past papers that festered on my desk. A date which was becoming etched deep within my psyche. A date so tediously important that it was beginning to make me sick. The anaphora builds up the importance of this date, whilst I also take the opportunity to weave in some more precise, subtle words such as etched and psyche. Returning to the original passage, it's worth thinking what sentences actually add things to the mood and which ones don't. For instance, do we need to mention the movement into the kitchen? Do the questions need to be answered? What do you think? And is the reference to the golden gleaming A star a little cheesy, a little weak? Might something like this be more interesting and sophisticated? Even though I despise the notion of being judged by such formulaic, memory-based, desperately tedious tests, and even though I knew that so many top businessmen, Alan Sugar, Richard Branson to name just two, had achieved appalling exam results, I was desperate for straight nines. This creates a more mature, intelligent tone than the simple reference to desiring that golden gleaming A star, with a slightly obvious guttural alliteration.
Now it's time to look at a paragraph from a third past pupil.
This pupil wrote, "The sea means different things to everyone. A vast, infinite stretch of blue, covering the majority of our planet. Some see it as an opportunity, immense, startlingly white wind farms, with blades like skyscrapers generating enough power for a household for a week. Others see it as a most incredible beauty, glistening turquoise waves, vibrant corals, darting fish, hulking whales. Some see it as a threat, 100-foot waves, grey foaming water, endlessly deep oblivion capable of swallowing whole nations. We know less about the deepest seabed than the solar system. What do you make of this response, dear viewers, subscribers, and pupils? Are there any ideas or phrases you could nick? What could make it better? Time now to scrutinise in detail and think or discuss. Yes, it's pause time. Again, so much to like. I really like the way the pupil has responded to the prompt within this first paragraph. By pointing out that the sea means different things to everyone, he is giving a more mature, sophisticated perspective. It can be seen as a financial opportunity to help save the current energy crisis, something astonishingly beautiful to be revered, or something terrifying. We have the broader range of punctuation with the colon and the dash. There's also some more interesting vocabulary: startlingly white, glistening waves, hulking whales. The asyndeton, list separated by commas without any conjunction such as and, creates a more intense, fast-paced effect, which I also like. So is this response on track for a grade 9? Could it be improved at all? Well, there are two sentences I slightly wonder about. First up, sentence 4, particularly the opening phrase. Others see it as a most incredible beauty. Could this be phrased more elegantly or beautifully? Whilst does the phrase endlessly deep oblivion somehow sound a little cliched? Time for my revised versions. A source of inspiration from Shakespeare to Keats. Others recognise its sublime beauty. Glistening turquoise waves, vibrant corals, darting fish, hulking whales. Some see it as a threat. 100-foot waves, grey foaming water, and depths which put our highest land peaks to shame. Within my first change, I've gone for additional variation within the sentence structure. Name-checked famous poets in a feeble attempt to suggest how well read I am, and used the more interesting adjective sublime to describe the sea's beauty. Meanwhile, in the second change, I've replaced the slightly tautological endlessly deep oblivion with the more specific and less hyperbolic depths which put our highest land peaks to shame. Boca dos Namorados, or translated literally from the Portuguese, the mouth of the lovers. English cretins reading these words for the first time might be left perplexed by what this might represent. The capitalization namorados, lovers, suggests some kind of title or at least importance. Could this represent some kind of sick ancient ritual, or might the phrase be figurative, suggesting a pathway to love and marriage? Aficionados of Madeira are left with no such doubts. Boca dos Namorados is a hidden gem of a viewing point overlooking the curiously named Nuns Valley from the dizzying height of 1,100 metres. It can be reached a number of ways. The way you choose determines your experience. The sluggish, lazy, indolent, unthinking barbecue lovers unlock their hire car, load up their freezer box, and drive up the meandering road from Estreito de Câmara de Lobos. With the car radio tuned to maximum volume, they arrive, nip over to the viewing point, take the obligatory group selfie before getting on with the more serious work in hand, preparing food to be eaten in beauty spots. There is another way. Those that think, those that have a soul, those that typically elect to walk distances of 200 meters rather than take the car, those that recognize that sublimity needs to be earned, take the bus to the last stop within the aforementioned, curiously named Nuns Valley. There is silence bar the occasional birds tweet and lizards rustle within the undergrowth. Rather than look back towards the quaint village of Curral dos Freires, dotted with crumbling pink brick cottages, cherry and grape plantations, and the occasional chained goat, they look up towards the bluest of blue skies and fix their views upon the summit of a craggy ridge, just as Wordsworth did in another place at another time. Then the hard work begins. The climb from Curral dos Freires to Boca dos Namorados is not one to be attempted by the faint-hearted or the grossly obese. The ascent is unrelenting. However, rewards are rich. For the first 30 minutes or so, you pass bewitching combinations of lush green vegetation and huge cacti, traverse rickety wooden bridges, and clamber over fallen tree trunks. The views are mostly hidden, with only the occasional burst of blue sky bringing a flash of joy to the parched and weary. After 30 minutes, the terrain begins to change and the path becomes more rugged and exposed. Those that attempt this challenge befuddled by alcohol, almost certainly the lethal local rum cocktail punch, run the risks of joining previous foolish souls who have fallen and perished at the bottom, their bodies never to be recovered. However, the sober begin to realise why they decided to embark upon this venture in the first place. Their hearts sing as they spy the Madeiran chaffinch flitting to and from the path, and step over stones adjacent to a shaded 50-feet waterfall. Even whilst their breathing becomes shallower, their souls rejoice as they sneak a peek at the increasingly tiny valley below and spot the tiniest of buses winding its way around the vale. Around 2 hours after starting, with dripping bodies, jelly legs and gasping throats, you arrive. Now is time to stop. Now is time to take off the rucksack. And now is time to drink water. You shamble towards the viewing point and time stands still. Time stops. You have reached and earned Boca dos Namorados. Some reflections on this. As with one of my pupils, I started by suggesting different ways something could be interpreted. What might Boca dos Namorados actually refer to? But I don't tell my reader this until the second paragraph, hopefully mildly intriguing them and encouraging them to continue reading. Notice ambitious vocabulary from the start, and then the hint of a strident tone, seen in the reference to the English as cretins. Note the humorous use of capital letters in the final sentence of the third paragraph. Humorous given that capital letters are typically used to present something important and significant, as opposed to something as mundane and domestic as preparing food. Note the short paragraph for effect in "There is another way," which leads me on to contrast the lazy with those genuinely prepared to put the work in to enjoy nature. Within the fifth paragraph, I begin by using anaphora, those that, to rhetorically build up the people prepared to walk up to Boca dos Namorados. Note also the fact that I have two different visual perspectives in this sentence. I start off by talking about what I'm not looking towards, although I describe it nonetheless, before talking about what I am looking at. This creates a richer, more sophisticated descriptive landscape. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice the paraphrasing from Wordsworth's famous poem, The Prelude. The effect of this is not only to emphasize to the examiner my own erudition, but also to imply that the experience with nature is genuinely special and sublime, just as Wordsworth's was. It's obviously important to have plenty of description within your piece, as I do when I reference bewitching combinations of lush green vegetation and huge cacti, traverse rickety wooden bridges, and clamber over fallen tree trunks. Further detailed description is seen within this paragraph. Note that I don't just say a bird, I say a Madeiran chaffinch. Note that I don't just say a waterfall, but a shaded 50 feet waterfall, to help my readers really picture my scene. Notice the repetition and short sentences for effect within my final few paragraphs to indicate the significance of finally reaching my goal. Given my scathing comments about the car-hired tourists, the verb earned is significant, thus separated within dashes to highlight its importance. The final sentence has an air of finality about it, as I once again reference the full name of the viewing points. You have reached and earned Boca dos Namorados.
This has been a Schofield on Shakespeare production, giving you loads of ideas for improving your descriptive narrative writing response for CIE IGCSE English Language Paper 2. Many thanks for watching.